Bishop Cutler, Chancellor Lynch, Chancellor Fountain, Dr. Cooper, Admiral Davidson, Mr. Stroink, graduates, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me take off my hat. The hard work is done. Northrop Frye, that great scholar of English literature and the Bible, on an occasion like this said to the graduates, this is one of the 4 epic events in your life, the other 3 being your birth, your marriage, and your death. This is the only one where you are sufficiently compos mentis to know what is going on, so enjoy every minute of it. And I hope you have. I have participated in only one student protest in my entire life, and that was in 1960. I was at Harvard as an undergraduate student, and there were 2 decisions made by the University Senate, one of which was actually quite marvelous. Until that time, the women at Harvard were at Radcliffe College, and they took the classes with the young men, wrote the same exams, but they received the degree of Radcliffe College. And it was only in that year that they were admitted to take the degree of Harvard University, thereby increasing the average intellectual quotient of Harvard graduates by a very considerable amount. And I, as my classmates, male, were the fortuitous beneficiaries of that unearned distinction, but it served us well. The other decision, and I was so struck by this as I heard the magnificent Latin throughout these proceedings, was that the Senate decided that Latin should be removed from the university degree because it was no longer a well understood or spoken language. And for us young men, of course, in 1960, that was absolutely outrageous. So our student council met and we crafted a very persuasive, we thought, petition to the president of the university, Dr. Nathan Pusey. We delivered it at 10 o'clock in the morning, requesting that we meet with him on this urgent matter as soon as possible. And to our enormous surprise, we were invited to have tea with him in the afternoon in the garden of the university, in his home, which was right on the campus. And we got dressed up in jackets and ties and arrived there at 4 o'clock, and were each served a cup of tea. And he emerged and spoke to us for about 10 minutes without a note in a language we did not understand. And when he had finished, he looked at us with a puzzled frown on his brow and said, I have just been reciting from memory Cicero's address to the Roman Senate on the importance of tradition in ceremony and the understanding of all that comes from it. And I detect that not one of you have understood a single word that I've said. So when the day comes when you can understand the importance of our tradition in Latin, return to me and we will restore the degrees in Latin. As I heard this wonderful music today, many thoughts went through my head. The last hymn, Sing to the Lord with a joyful voice, with a cheerful voice, was the actual language from the King James Version. And I was thinking of 2 other expressions of joy in music, and this is such a joyful place of remarkable music with this great choir and the organ that booms the sound out and the wonderful acoustics of this Gothic hall. One that's very old from the Psalms, and that is Make a Joyful Noise unto the Lord. And then another is quite modern. It comes from that hymn that George Beverly Shea used to sing, How Great Thou Art. You remember that, with the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and with Billy James. And there's a line in it that goes, make a joyful noise unto the world, and then sings my soul. Well, there are a lot of souls that we're singing today. I'm so delighted to be with you today. I'm so fortunate to both to receive this honorary doctorate of civil law and to be in the company of such other remarkable recipients. As was indicated in the citation, I've spent virtually all my life in academia. I went off to university at age 18 from a small town in northern Ontario, and I loved it so much I never left it. I was on a 1-year leave of absence from my law firm from all that period of time until I was 69 and I was asked to do this job, and I thought I'd better do a real job before I finish my time. And this job, of course, is equally joyful and not real in that sense. It's also interesting for me to learn I'm not the first Governor General to be presented with an honorary degree from this institution. The Duke of Connaught received one in 1912 when he described the school as, quote, one of the educational pioneers in this country, deserving of the respect of all Canadians, unquote. Certainly an apt description of King's College. As you know, the history of the university dates back to 225 years. And imagine what a fresh-faced young Canadian in 1789 would have experienced, the lessons that would have been taught, the discoveries that would lie ahead. And so for more than 2 centuries, King's College has witnessed advances in science, astronomy, mathematics, genetics, medicine, and the very nature of the universe itself. And King's College and its students have proven themselves to be so resilient over these past 200 years. Remember what Darwin said, it's not the strongest or the most powerful of the species that survive, it's the most resilient. Take, for example, the massive fire in 1920, which destroyed the university then housed in Windsor, Nova Scotia. The very continuation of this institution was in jeopardy, but instead of accepting its fate, the school fought to live another day. Since then, Halifax has been this university's home, and this place has been your home since you began your studies. A lot has changed over the past 225 years. Indeed, a lot has changed in the past decade alone. Heavens, perhaps the most significant discovery in human history in this past decade, the unraveling of the human genome. We actually understand the architecture in DNA and RNA that makes us who we are. This should not be surprising or concerning. After all, at its very core, the university experience is about learning, and it's about evolving, and it's the new truths. Nous abordons tous l'expérience universitaire avec des idées et des notions préconçues qui sont vite remises en question dans cet environnement stimulant. Certaines de nos convictions s'en trouvent renforcées, mais parfois l'apprentissage est un facteur de transformation. You may experience the same transformation when presented with a case so persuasive, so convincing, so passionate that you cannot help but be changed by it. It could be as simple as discovering a new author, or considering a new historical perspective, or as significant as a complete rethinking of career paths. I remember one of those light-going moments when I was in a first-year intellectual history course at Harvard, and I had done quite well in history studies in Ontario. We had grade 13, and we had the great final examination set by the province, and for the history course we had one textbook. I don't have a photographic memory, but I have a good one. I suppose I read the textbook 6 or 7 times, so I had a pretty good sense of what it said, and the question was the factors leading to Canadian Confederation in 1867 on the examination. I could picture in my mind the 3 pages of that treatise that explained that, quickly write them down and on to the next particular exam question. But there I was in the first year of this American intellectual history course taught by a wonderful professor, Donald Fleming. There were about 1,000 kids in the class, and he had no single textbook, no single treatise. In fact, we didn't use books as such. We had selected readings for each week's theme, and they would be 5 or 6, ranging from 10 to 100 pages. And for a particular week early on, I took the 5 readings and I carefully digested it, and then I made a summary, and then I made a little index card to indicate what was the response or the answer to that particular question. It might have been the causes of the U.S. Civil War that week. And lined up the 5 cards. And to my enormous consternation, each one was different. Well, I was very confused by that. Remember the 3 pages that you copy out of the book. So I went to Professor Fleming after class and I said, "Sir, I'm so confused." I carefully summarized each of the readings and I placed my cards side by each. And each one is different. Which one is the truth? Well, I suppose he could have said to me, "My on earth, where did this guy come from and how did we ever admit him to this place?" But being the great professor he was, he didn't. He put his arm around my shoulder and whispered into my ear, "Maybe none of them." And the light went on. The light went on. There's a power in education, and it's the reason, I suppose, that as the university orator said in the citation, that the title of my installation address was "A call to service. It was a smart and caring nation, a call to service with three pillars: family and children, learning and innovation, and philanthropy and volunteerism. They all come together really in learning, as we do in an institution of this kind. And of course, both adjectives are important, the smart and caring. And this is something that Canada does so very well. I think we as a society have worked harder at equality of opportunity than any nation on the face of the earth. And of course, the particular equality of opportunity that is so powerful is the equality of opportunity through public education. And therefore, I'm so honored today that one of our recipients is, of course, Malala Yousafzai. And I'm so struck and thrilled that you have created this remarkable set of scholarships in Malala's name. I hope the other recipients on the stage will forgive me for a moment for focusing on Malala, but her story is so unique and reflects how important education is for all societies. And I've often said if I were king of the globe for a day and I had one thing that I would wish for or do, it would be to do everything that is necessary to ensure that women throughout the world have at least equal opportunity for education to men. And thereby we would really change the world. And of course, King's is taking a pretty impressive first step with this scholarship today. We know something of Malala's story. This young woman selflessly risked her life to speak out about the importance of education, specifically for girls. For those of us here in this magnificent place, in this magnificent university, in this great country, Canada, it's difficult to imagine what it would be like to have our freedom of education taken away. But for Malala, this was a fact of life, and she was determined to change it. And she has reminded us, therefore, that education is an inalienable right, one worth every risk. At her address to the UN last year, she said, "Let us pick up our books and pens. They are our most powerful weapons. One child, one teacher, one pen, and one book can change the world. Education is the only solution." That rang very true with me because in my installation address again, that I mentioned a moment ago, I said, if you remember only 3 words of what I say today, they are cherish our teachers. And I direct my glance to these marvelous people who are the faculty of King's College. There's a lot we can learn from this remarkable young woman. And incidentally, I was so delighted to hear the reason that she's not here today because she does not want to disturb her studies. And I'm so delighted about this scholarship, to give young women in developing nations an opportunity they would not normally receive. That's the essence of Malala's message, and Canada's message as well, and so appropriate for Canada, this country that has so prized equality of opportunity and is anxious to extend it to the whole world. And I often say that the great question is, can you have equality of opportunity and excellence too? Can you see those two objectives as mutually reinforcing and not mutually conflicting? Well, King's is proof positive that you have both, equality of opportunity and excellence too. Quality education like the one at King's can help us to grow as individuals, more confident in our beliefs and in our knowledge. However, what you do with those beliefs and knowledge when you leave here, that's up to you. And that's the last Latin phrase I think you heard, which was a pretty good one. Act on it. One of my favorite little couplets comes from George Bernard Shaw, who said, "Some people see things as they are and wonder why. We dream of things that ought to be and ask why not." And that's an urge to get on with it. Quoi que vous fassiez plus tard, ou que vous vous retrouviez, je vous encourage à redonner à autrui dans la mesure du possible. J'ai eu l'occasion de constater directement quelqu'un des moyens admirables employés par de jeunes Canadiens pour faire de ce pays un endroit où il fait bon vivre. Let me just finish by telling you a story about giving. I had the wonderful privilege of being Dean of the Law School at Western University for 5 years, and I asked just one privilege, please, as Dean, could I be the first one to meet the incoming students? And in those days, we were really fortunate. We had a composite picture, photographs of the entering class. Again, my memory's not superb, but it's good. And so I took 10 names and faces and places of origin for the 15 days before the class came in and memorized them so I could greet each student by their first name. Now, this was a little concerning to some of the students because, my gosh, I've only arrived and the good old dean's already got the book on me. I'm really in trouble. But it was to make them feel so welcome into the study of the noble profession of law. And I wanted to convey to them my passion for law and the trust and social contract that comes with that professionalism. And so when I met them on that first day and greeted them, I said, you're entering a noble profession, a profession I love. The rule of law has served our country well. But as a professional, you will take an oath for the improvement of justice in our society. That's your responsibility. And I ask you to do just one thing. You'll not be immediately wealthy in the practice of law. In fact, you'll probably not be terribly wealthy at all. Lawyers don't get terribly rich. Other pursuits do. But give 10% of your practicing time to pro bono work on behalf of others without any remuneration. And you will find, I guarantee, that as much as you enjoy the other 90% of your practice, you'll enjoy that pro bono portion even more. I cannot tell you how many times a former student has come up to me at some kind of gathering and says, you know, Dean, you remember about the 10% pro bono you talked about in the first day? Well, I don't do quite 10%. It's more like 4 or 5%, but you are right. It's by far the most fulfilling portion of my practice. I love that story, and I love what it tells us about human nature and our experience of giving. I suppose it was that and others that motivated me and my colleagues to start mygivingmoment.ca, to make the notion of looking after one's neighbor something that is a central characteristic of being a Canadian. That's what Canadian is. We care about other people, and we exercise that care, and we do it in smart ways. All of you here owe thanks to the first King's College students who entered the university 225 years ago, filled with hopes and dreams and ideals. And though that first class was small, the students' aspirations were not. And with each subsequent class, through years both lean and stout, these young Canadians have given back to their communities, solidifying the reputation of Canada's East Coast as an innovative and transformational place to study. I'd like to leave you then today with the same message I've delivered to countless young people all across Canada. There are those who would say that you are the leaders of tomorrow, but that's simply not true. You are already leaders today. You are changing Canada. You are making a difference. And whether you plan to study further or enter the workforce, whether you stay in Halifax or move to other provinces or countries, I know that you will take all that you learned here with you. So please use your talents, your passion, your knowledge, your kindness, your creativity. Use everything that you have at your disposal to do good in the world. Because when you do, when we all do, we build a fairer, smarter, more caring society. Merci.